Love that.
So just a little bit of background about myself. I'm a volunteer in the GoldenGate National Recreation Area in San Francisco. Started there when I retired about 8 years ago from public education. I was a teacher and a high school principal for 30 years in the San Francisco and neighboring school districts. I started volunteering at Alcatraz, where I led tours there. Fantastic place. If you haven't been there, be sure you go there. And now I volunteer at Muir Woods National Monument, giving tours there. And I started doing these then and now projects in the GGNRA. Grand Canyon is my 6th park that I've done this project. So GGNRA, Point Reyes National Seashore, Redwood National Estate Parks, Yosemite National Park, Death Valley National Park, and now the crown jewel, Grand Canyon National Park. Okay, so I'm going to get started. So you can start the clock. I'm going to start my clock so I know what's going on. Okay, here we go. So I observed a group of middle school students boisterously approach Mather Point, jabbering away as only young adolescents can. One boy was particularly loud, laughing, cracking jokes, completely unaware of his surroundings. When they reached the top of the stairs and caught their first glimpse of the vastness before them, the group stopped and quieted as one. "Whoa," the boy mumbled. Try to describe the Grand Canyon. Verbal language is simply inadequate to the task. US President Teddy Roosevelt was unable to do it. In quotes, "I could not choose words that would convey or could convey to any outside what that canyon is." Geologist Clarence Dutton wrote of the scale of the place, in quotes, "Dimension means nothing to the senses, and all we are left with is a troubled sense of immensity." Joshua Rose, former editor of American Art Collector magazine, suggests that perhaps the task is best left to the artists, in quotes, "to respond emotionally in ways that only the visual arts can." With Grand Canyon Then and Now, we attempt to capture only a tiny slice of the magnitude described above. Even though a photograph may be worth 1,000 words, ours is simply a glimpse into time and light. Through comparative photographs in the following sections I'm going to show you, one takes a peek into the history of the human experience in the canyon, perhaps moving the viewer a step closer to fathoming the sublime. So before we start, I like to show this image because it illustrates that the images we're about to see inevitably force us to consider what has been, what is, and what will be in the Grand Canyon. Each step, a click of the camera, a deep breath, connects the visitor to an ancient story. And we're reminded that many layers are hidden behind what we see. Okay, now I need to do a little switcheroo here. So this exhibit is actually currently online. We're going to take it offline in just a moment. And we need to expand it. So I cover 8 different topics with this exhibit, and I'm going to show you how to get there. So this is the Canyon's main website. If you go to learn about the park and drop down to history and culture, you'll find Grand Canyon Then and Now. Okay? But because we have not very good internet access here, I'm just going to take you, and thanks to Charlie, we uploaded all these pages so we don't have to wait for things to upload. So this is the landing page for the Grand Canyon Then and Now website. And there are, as I said, 8 sections. We have Sacred Canyon. You have the explorers, surveyors, and river rats, and the way you'll navigate is you click on the thumbnail that's to the left, and it will take you to the pages, which we'll go through in just a moment. You have the rocks, miners, and moonshots. You have building the national park, rails and roads, tourism designs for the leisure class, and artistic interpretation. Actually, we're missing one. Oh, you know, we've got 2 that are saying building the national park. So this one should be tourism for the rugged, but we'll get there later. Okay. So let's move directly to Sacred Canyon. Okay, and you'll see there are a number. There will be totally about 70 or 75 pairs of photographs here, but we're starting with only about 8, one for each of these categories a couple we have too. So the first one is called Sacred Canyon. Now, as a white person, I've grappled with the idea of the Grand Canyon as a sacred place. I've asked a lot of people about this. I feel the canyon's power, especially as I descend into its interior and experience the changing light, the texture of the rocks, the soils, and the weather. But my experience is only temporary. For the indigenous people of the canyon region, the rocks, trees, floods, and animals are all sacred and integral to who they are. Havasupai tribe member Rex Toulouse described it, in quotes, "The whole canyon and everything in it is sacred to us, all around, up and down." In this promotional photo from Santa Fe Railroad and the Fred Harvey Company, I'm going to show you the photo. This is one of the best aspects of this whole deal here. Indigenous people on the roof of the Hopi House watched the arrival of tourists to the El Tovar Hotel. The photo was likely staged and serves as an ironic symbol of the national park's challenging historical relations with the Native American population. The Native Americans stand upon a structure that was designed by a European American woman, Mary Coulter, and intended to replicate ancient structures. They are there to provide a facade of authenticity to the visiting tourists. And then, so this is my photograph taken from the roof of the Hopi House, which was not an easy thing to get up to, let me tell you. All right, we'll move on to the next section, which is called Explorers, Surveyors, and River Rats, and I have a couple of photos in here. You've likely heard of Lieutenant Joseph Ives' statement in 1857 that the Grand Canyon region was altogether valueless. It shall forever be unvisited and undisturbed. He was, of course, in complete ignorance of the indigenous people of this sometimes harsh and unforgiving landscape, who had established trails, farms, trade routes, and villages thousands of years before Ives came along and declared it unvisited. I remain in awe of the bravery and fortitude of both the indigenous people and the early European American explorers such as Powell, Mathis, and Stanton. As I search for the exact locations to replicate archival photographs, I have at my fingertips maps produced with global satellite technology, up-to-date weather reports, the guidance of Grand Canyon veterans, and access to an extensive trail network. Let me get to the image I want to show you. So this is the Stanton expedition at Lee's Ferry in 1889. The Stanton expedition was surveying possible routes for a rail line through the Grand Canyon to carry coal from the Rocky Mountains to San Diego. After a tragic first effort during which 3 men lost their lives shortly after departing from Lee's Ferry, Stanton regrouped with better boats and life jackets, finally reaching the Gulf of California in April of 1890. Of course, the railroad was never built. All right, moving on to the next section. It's called The Rocks, Miners. Oh, no, actually, wait a second. No. I want to show you one other. Sorry about that. This one. Oh, I didn't show you, did I? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so conscious of time. All right. So this is down with a nice bunch of algae in the water. Cool technology, isn't it? All right. Let's go to this one. Oops. For this project, I received tremendous support from many people. Most notably, I'm very appreciative of the assistance provided by Michael Quinn, Jill Starowski, Kylie Caesar, and Kim Beeson of the National Park Service, Kathy Dooley of the Grand Canyon Conservancy, Kevin Schindler of Lowell Observatory, of course, geologist Wayne Rainey, also known as husband of Helen, and Haley Johnson, naturally, Madam President, and Helen Fairley of the U.S. Geological Survey. You know, the USGS has been engaged in a project to rephotograph nearly all of the photographs taken during the 1923 Bird's Eye expedition. Their goal is to document the myriad changes in river ecology that have occurred since the Glen Canyon Dam was completed in 1963. Helen Fairley provided me with several photos from the Bird's Eye expedition, and which are on the website, and a couple they were able to re-photograph from the 1872 Powell expedition. This photo from Little Nankoweap shows Powell's chair atop his boat. I've yet to see a photo of Powell in that chair, so if anybody knows of one with the boat, I'd love to see it and try to re-photograph it. And this is, see, this is taken by Helen, right? So this photo is taken by Helen. Great job, by the way. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, now moving on. This is called The Rocks, Miners and Moonshots. The typical visitors to the Grand Canyon approach the rim and are overwhelmed by the dimensions of the panorama that opens before them. It's really too much for the brain to hold and to comprehend. To my mind, the only way to even begin to comprehend what this ditch is all about is to get down into it, to touch the rocks, which are a timeline of geologic history, feel the thermoclines and the heat rise as one descends, step across the dry streams and imagine boulders scouring the land, swept along by the floods that occasionally rush down the canyons. Geologists have for a long time debated the formation of the canyon and struggled to communicate their understandings to the visiting public. One of the earliest to master this skill was Edwin McKee. McKee became the official park naturalist in 1929 when his predecessor, Glenn Sturtevant, tragically drowned while crossing the Colorado River. McKee's rise to the position actually started back when he was a Boy Scout in Washington, D.C.'s Troop 1. I don't know how many of you know about this, but his scoutmaster was famed Grand Canyon topographer Francois Mathis. When Grand Canyon National Park was established in 1919, Mathis recommended McKee to Dr. John Merriam, who was president of the Carnegie Institution, and he was developing public education systems in Grand Canyon. McKee served as park naturalist for 11 years, during which time he wrote the groundbreaking Ancient Landscapes of the Grand Canyon region, which experienced 30 revised printings until 1985. At the end of his term in 1940, the NPS transferred him to Yosemite National Park, but he refused that assignment and resigned instead. He became assistant director at the Museum of Northern Arizona and then served on the faculty of the University of Arizona, eventually becoming head of the Department of Geology. All right, next section, moving. Oh God, thank you. I'm just like so ready to move on. So I was here in January and we had a lot of snow. Isn't that lovely? Okay. This one, this shot took 3 trips down to Havasupai Gardens to get this right. Several times in the past few years, I've had the great privilege to visit a number of new national parks in Chilean Patagonia. They're extraordinarily beautiful, but nearly devoid of infrastructure. They haven't had the time or the resources to build the facilities and services that visitors to U.S. national parks, like the Grand Canyon, have come to expect. We expect hotels with plumbing and running water, well-maintained trails that provide access to most areas within the park, and to be safe and secure. A key factor in the development of this park was the role of the Civilian Conservation Corps as directed by Superintendent Minor Art Tillotson. During Tillotson's tenure, the CCC completed the North and South Kaibab trails, as well as the Clear Creek, Colorado, and Upper Ribbon Falls trails. They built many of the walls that line the rim in Grand Canyon Village, as well as the Trans-Canyon telephone line. It was strung from tree to rock and was frequently out of commission. Often, workers had to dangle from ropes or cliffs to install poles in the cliff sides. The line provided instantaneous communication between north and south rims, but could only handle one call at a time. Finding, I don't know where my pointer is, but anyway, if you notice down in the lower left-hand corner, there's a rock with a kind of a vertical notch in it. That was my clue that I had to find amongst all of these towers down there. But I had fun. Okay, next section is called Rails and Roads. I'm a little out of order here. Hope we got them all. Okay. As a tourist, getting around the south rim of the Grand Canyon these days is pretty darn easy. You have excellent roads to get to fantastic views and hikes. In the village, you really don't need a car because you can walk or take a frequent bus to even more amazing places. Such was definitely not the case in the early 1900s. There was no interstate highway system back then. For the mostly white Americans and Europeans who chose to make the journey, jarring, hard-scrabble roads and trails were their manifest destiny. Sorry for that bit. The first train from Williams to the South Rim was on September 17th, 1901. At the behest of the U.S. Forest Service, the railway company partnered with the Fred Harvey Company to supply lodging and food. They built buildings, provided power and water, and maintained all facilities. The railroad also contracted with ranchers to move stock, loggers to move lumber, and with the orphan mine to transport uranium in the 1950s. So this one is not quite perfect, but you get the skyline right. The train looks so much prettier during the wintertime somehow. Okay, moving on. We're missing one here, Charlie, which I really want to have. Let's see if we can get there afterwards. Tourism for the leisure class, yes. Okay. When Grand Canyon National Park was established in 1919, there were 6.7 million automobiles in the United States, registered in the United States. By 1930, so 1919, 1930, that number had more than tripled to over 23 million. It was definitely the age of the automobile. And what a change the automobile brought to the canyon. The visitation increased 450% in that same 11-year period as the car overtook the train as the most popular way to travel into the park. It became much easier for families to escape from their busy lives and take vacations to such distant places as the Grand Canyon. And visitors expected more of their park. They wanted better hotels, more roads, and more of the comforts of a home. They came not only to stand in awe, but also to have fun, to escape and be with family and friends. National parks served as places of refuge from the trials of American life. For African Americans traveling around the country, it was a challenge, to say the least. Many businesses were off limits to their black patrons. Hotels and restaurants often refused them service. Victor Green created a travel guide for African Americans in 1936 called The Green Book. It was published until 1966, highlighting lodging, restaurants, and fuel stations that would serve African Americans, a roadmap for safe travel, if you will. Both the Bright Angel Lodge and the El Tovar Hotel were listed in the Green Book, as were accommodations in many other national parks. And of course, I had to find African American people to be in this photo, which they were very excited to be as part of this. Okay. One of my favorite parts about this is going out and rephotographing paintings. As mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, there just aren't the right words to convey the sublimity of the Grand Canyon. So as Joshua Rose suggests, perhaps the task is best left to the artists. The artists I profiled in this section are all masters at capturing the light, the scale, and the texture of a canyon in a way that no words and only the rare photographs are able. Amory Bowling, who is the artist of Fresh Snow on Yaqui Point, described her process to me, in quotes, "The sky was constantly changing, sometimes completely gray and socked in, sometimes partly cloudy, with the occasional ray of light passing through the clouds. I had to rely on my memory of the view because the best stuff, the light on the cliffs, the moving clouds, my sense of wonder is visually fleeting. The other trick is to catching the light before the sun goes down and both the paint and your fingers begin to freeze." I want to recommend to all of you to visit the Grand Canyon Conservancy's Celebration of Art exhibit, currently downstairs at the Kolb Studio. Each year, a number of plein air artists are invited to the park. The exhibit is a display of these artists' work, and much of the work is truly fantastic. Just such a testament to Amory's technical skills. Beautiful. One last one I want to show you is this one. Norman Rockwell, American painter, was featured on over 400 covers of the Saturday Evening Post. In 1969, he was invited by the Bureau of Reclamation to paint the Glen Canyon Dam for display in the dam's visitor center. Claiming, "I'm a people person, not a landscape painter," a local Navajo family was invited to be in the painting. When the dam was completed in 1963, it flooded numerous Navajo cultural sites of significance, including the confluence of the San Juan and Colorado rivers, I know, considered the birthplace of moisture by the Navajo. Ironically, the dam threatened the Navajo Nation's access to water that was guaranteed by an 1868 treaty. And there it is. That's it. That's all we got, folks. Yeah, thank you very much.